Hi guys, I'm back with some more stories for you today. Let's go to the first one, about OP, whose ex-wife demands he gives their son's college fund money to her stepson. Shocking, I know. Listen to the end of the story to hear my opinion on the situation. Enjoy the stories, guys, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. We lost our son Mason 5 years ago when he was 12, and our lives fell apart. I drank more, wouldn't talk to anyone. Eventually, my ex and I got a divorce due to our many problems, my drinking being a main one. That was my rock bottom, and I started trying to get better. My sweet Mason had a best friend he knew since kindergarten, Ricky. I lost contact with his family for a while, but a couple years after my son passed, Ricky started coming by the house almost every day after school. I was still recovering from my alcoholism around that time, so I feel it was to also keep me company. He's honestly a great kid, very kind, and so mature beyond his years. It helped a lot spending time with him. Lord knows he was in pain too, losing his best friend so young. We've gotten pretty close, and consider him family. Ricky is starting his senior year soon, and going to be applying to colleges. I haven't told him yet, but I was putting money aside for years since before Mason was born for the hopes he'd use it for college. My parents gifted me the first check. It's not a whole lot, but it would be enough to cover several semesters, depending on where he goes. Ricky has no contact with his mom, even though she technically is the one who had sole custody. He's been living with his grandpa for years, so he's been worried about how he'll apply for financial aid. Don't want him to worry, which is why I wanted to cover it for him. As someone who I consider family, and someone who was my son's best friend. The problem is, my ex knows I had this money saved. She got remarried 2 years ago, and her stepdaughter will also be starting college. My ex and I still get along, and we still talk, so I know she's fallen on hard times, both her and her husband. That's why she's asking if I could help her out here, and it would mean a lot to them. I was deeply conflicted about this until I said no, because I'd like Ricky to have this. But she's still urging me to change my mind, and asking, as the mother of my child, to please help her family. Like I said, we get along, and I have no ill feelings towards her family. This isn't about being petty, which is what she's starting to call it. But I know Ricky will struggle too, and I'd like to help him. We've had arguments over the phone about this, and she still won't drop it. Now she says she feels like I've let her down. Didn't think I'd be so unwilling to help them out after everything we have been through. I understand it's my money at the end of the day. I'd just like to know if I'm being an a-hole with her about this, considering she's asking for help. In my opinion, OP's ex has a lot of audacity to ask for money after their divorce. I understand the circumstances were hard, but she's moved on, and her issues are no longer OP's problem. OP doesn't owe her anything. Ricky is the one that's kept OP sane after everything, and it's incredibly kind of OP to help him. Let's hear the community's opinion on the situation. Dinasher says, not the a-hole. She has no right to force you to help her stepdaughter out. You have no relation with her at all, and even then, chances are she won't have such a positive impact on your recovery like Ricky has, even if the stepdaughter has a relationship with you. Right now, it isn't the case of who deserves it more, rather who you value more, and you have already stated that very clearly. If your ex doesn't understand nor respect your decision and wants to make life difficult, you need to remind her she should be approaching the bio mom for help rather than you, and there's plenty of loans or scholarships out there to apply for. It's weird she expects you to be responsible for her stepchild. Tis Queen says, not the a-hole. Tell her my responsibility to financially support you ended when the divorce was finalized. How you provide for your family is none of my business, just like how I provide for my family is none of your business. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your ex is being entitled. If I were in your shoes, I would cut my losses and go no contact. She doesn't care about your emotions, just how she's going to look like a hero to her stepdaughter and husband. Plastic Archer 4245 says, not the a-hole. To put it bluntly, you have no obligation to her stepdaughter. Your son never knew the stepdaughter, but did know Ricky. By the sounds of it, Ricky's family have abandoned him. Not sure of ex's stepdaughter's circumstances, but doesn't she have a bio mom that should be asked first? I have 2 stepdaughters who are 17 and 19, and I've been with my wife for 8 years. When she divorced her ex, he got primary custody for a couple of reasons. It was what the kids wanted. She worked a lot, and she had a little bit of a drinking problem. She saw them every other weekend, and I think she's a great mom, but apparently, I'm biased. Now, I don't think it's entirely their fault, but these girls are spoiled, entitled, and make it pretty clear they only see their mom because of money. For context, she has a very lucrative career, but her ex refused to work, and they feel like she abandoned them for her career. So they came to stay with us about a month ago when they got sick of quarantine. We live in a much nicer house than her ex, and have a pool and a gym. I completely believe they are here because of the house and not because of their mom. I don't mind. I was a teenager once too, but they are so rude to her. The 19-year-old took one women's studies class at college, and now she's a third-wave feminist, and the 17-year-old is constantly asking for money. I work hard as well to pay for our lifestyle, and I'm sick of not being able to relax in my house. I finish working from home, and I want to go hug and kiss my wife, but the kids have to make a face. I want to be able to banter like we normally do, without the 19-year-old policing if it's not politically correct or not. My wife was never an alcoholic. She drank because she was in a loveless, emotionally aggressive marriage, and she can drink responsibly with no problem. But God forbid she has a glass of wine in front of these kids. Mostly, I just want our marriage to be easy like it was a month ago. My wife is always getting into fights with her kids, and then I have to comfort her. Last night, she ended up in a huge fight with the 19-year-old over dinner. My wife didn't want to cook, but there was plenty of food in the house, and she gave them permission to order something. But it turned into a screaming match over how she would have cooked if I asked. Maybe she would have, but I'm actually nice to her throughout the day. So last night, I got to listen to my wife's little tantrum. She normally dresses nicely for bed, but she fell asleep in my shirt with makeup all over her face, and it was a little ridiculous, so I took a picture. I was teasing her this morning about it, and the 19-year-old has to get involved about how her mom doesn't have to look good for me. I'm really at my breaking point, and they have a father who they supposedly love. So would I be the a-hole if I asked my wife to ask them to leave? Maybe the girls wanted to live with their dad because mom had a drinking problem and terrible taste in men. She was upset and went to bed in her makeup, so OP took a photo of her and mocked her the next day? Based only on OP's description, the girls sound totally normal, and OP sounds awful. I think OP needs to let his wife repair her relationship with her daughters without his interference. Let's see what the community has to say. Demo Beck says, "You're the a-hole. You sound like a major a-hole. All of the focus is on how you want your wife's attention, and not on how your wife's problems affected her relationship with her kids. You should be encouraging your wife to try harder with them, not be taking photos of her sleeping to take the piss when she doesn't dress nicely for you." Here for the Story says, "You're the a-hole. You married into this family, and the kids come with that. Sorry, teenagers are difficult. Literally every other parent and step-parent in the world can relate. You aren't in an especially unpleasant situation. Also, stop blaming kids for not being adults yet." I, 32 female, have been friends with Michaela, 33 female, since college. We both currently work as RNs and share a house. We didn't have any problem until a year ago when my brother Walter, 36, my sister-in-law Jane, 32, and my nephew Samuel, 8, were almost homeless. My brother didn't have a job, and they were facing eviction. I talked to Michaela, and we agreed to let Walter and his family move into our spare room. Walter said he would pay their share on the bills and contribute to rent, which never happened because he never had money. He works on call as a waiter in a friend's restaurant, but this is only when they need him. So he only works part-time, around 3 days a week. When it's time to pay rent and bills, he never has money. He and his family buy their own groceries and cook for themselves, while Michaela and I buy our groceries and cook for ourselves and pay everything else. A month ago, Michaela and I decided to spoil ourselves after working hard for a year and went on a 3-week trip to Hawaii. When we returned, we found that Walter and Jane decided to house Jane's cousin and her 9-year-old daughter because they were homeless and jobless. This was the final straw for Michaela, and she told me she was going to move out because she wasn't going to pay for more people to live in our house. I didn't want her to move, and I was very irritated with Walter. I felt I was being taken advantage of. So we talked to Walter and Jane and had a huge fight. Walter and Michaela called each other every name under the sun. In the end, positions were clear. Jane's cousin needed to leave next day, and Walter and Jane had a month to find where to live. They found a small apartment a week later and moved out. That's how I found out they had been saving money by not buying anything for Samuel, clothes, toys, snacks, etc., while I was the one buying this for him because I felt sorry for my nephew. Walter called our parents that live in a small country in South America and told them I kicked them out of nowhere when he tried to help a family member that was homeless. That Jane was pregnant and he didn't have a stable source of income, so they would end up in the streets soon. How Samuel cried every night to sleep because they were living in a crap hole full of rats and was so scared. Also, that it was all Michaela's making. That they thought Michaela and I were a couple in secret. My parents called me furious and told me they raised me better than this. That family was everything, and it was horribly wrong to turn my back on my brother, especially when Jane was pregnant. They will blame me if something happened to Jane or the unborn baby, and they will never forgive me for making this to my brother. That I will be disowned if I didn't move out of Michaela's bad influence. After hearing my parents, I think maybe I was too harsh on my brother and feel like I'm the biggest a-hole on earth. OP's brother is a toxic leech. He and his wife took advantage of OP and Michaela's kindness, and when his game was figured out, tried to turn OP's family against OP. Screw that, and screw him. I feel horrible for OP's nephew, being stuck with those awful people. OP provided them shelter and gave nephew what he needed and was taken advantage of. I wouldn't be surprised if OP's brother was charging Jane's cousin for living in OP's house. Don't you think so, guys? EMCCM says, not the a-hole. I love how they say they raised you better than this. Well, who raised your brother? Ghostcraft33 says, not the a-hole. They were acting like it's their house, and it's not. How disrespectful can you be to invite 2 more people into the house, and without asking, when the owner is already doing you a favor by housing you? What's even worse is that her cousin and 9-year-old likely will not be able to pay for their own stuff like groceries and rent. That either means it falls upon Walter and Jane and you get even less rent money from them, or you'll have to pay, and that's unacceptable. You are not obligated to house every person in need, especially when they disrespect you, your rules, and your home. I would have blown up like Michaela too. I, 26 male, am an orphan of the left at the doorstep of the fire station variety. No name, information, birthday, anything. I guess I wasn't a very cute kid, because I was never adopted. Then I went through a series of foster homes, and the things that happened made me wish the US had actual orphanages, because at least workers are there for money, not whatever twisted duckery they think is parenting. I grew up bitter and worked hard, desperate to prove myself on the off chance that they'd see and come back. When no one was there for high school graduation, I broke down. Then I let go of the resentment, but in order for that to happen, I also let go of ever wanting anything resembling parents. I went to college and then got into med school, not because of a particular interest in medicine, but because no matter what happened, someone would always need a doctor. I fell in love with a classmate and we started dating. I never told her that I was an orphan, only telling her my parents were chronically absent. True. And someone else took care of me. Also true. After 2 years of dating, she proposed the day after our graduation 6 months ago. I was so happy that I finally had physical evidence, and a rather expensive ring at that, showing I was worthy of being loved, that I didn't remember parents or at weddings, so I'd need to tell her. Edit. The physical evidence bit was tongue-in-cheek. I grew up without gifts like that, and I learned to make do. The salient part is that that was the happiest that I'd ever been, and I didn't want to jeopardize that by unloading my past. We matched at the same hospital where her family lived, so we moved in together there. And after her 12th unsolicited visit from her mother asking what our plans for the wedding was, I decided to tell my fiancée in a probably crude way. I told her that my parents were chronically absent because I didn't know who they were, and someone else was the foster homes. After asking a couple questions, she ran away to her parents to discuss my parentlessness. Then they all came back for dinner. My prospective mother-in-law said that she and prospective father-in-law wanted me to think of them as my parents from now on, and that she'd be my mother for the wedding. I thanked them, but said I wasn't interested in having parents of any kind. But she insisted. Everyone should know a parent's love. I made a joke about a mouse in my research eating its baby. She pushed again, and I said it'd be akin to step-sibling incest. Then future father-in-law slammed the table and yelled at me for not taking his wife or daughter seriously. And I snapped, telling him to get a grip and go find my parents if they wanted me to have them. And God, I hope they have better luck than I did. They shut up and left. Later, my fiancé and I were going to the room they were holed up in to apologize and talk calmly, when we overheard them talking about the situation. They were really concerned about what it would look like to Gramps if his granddaughter was marrying an orphan. See, that's the kind of thing I've come to expect from parents. But my fiancé is still upset and demanding to know what else I'm hiding from her. The answer is nothing. Her parents and her gigantic family that won't fit into a damn farmhouse are obviously important to her. But I never knew mine, So this wasn't a huge secret, just something I didn't like talking about. Am I the a-hole? Or even if I am, is there anything else I could have done to get a better outcome? Some clarifying details. When I made this post, I knew Lola's fiance. I can't believe I've been spelling it wrong this entire time, and no one pointed it out. Family was rich, but there's rich and then there's influential, both of which they are. I only knew about the latter part in vague details before the events happened, because I didn't care before, and Lola becoming a doctor was in part an effort to break away from the mold of the family, so she doesn't like going into too much detail. They are deeply entrenched into the business and local government of the U.S. South, and are conservatives, so my lack of heritage is a problem to them, not only in a social lens, but also in a practical one in terms of possible scandals, campaign ammunition. That's why it's become an issue. Prospective father-in-law has been told point blank that they don't want a nameless, fatherless, marrying into the family. Update. I'm the a-hole for keeping my status as an orphan from Lola, only for the reason that she is the person I've decided to dedicate my life to, so I should trust her with everything about my life. I don't agree that I should have told her because if it turns out she has a problem with orphans, that's wasted time for both of us. Nor do I agree that I lied. I was never under the illusion that I could keep it a secret forever, but I don't see the issue in having wasted a year or 6 months, or whatever subjectively defined timeline you, in the royal sense, personally might have wanted to know about it. All relevant factors, e.g., not being a strong family man, are exactly the same whether I'm an orphan or just have really absent parents. I'm the a-hole for saying vulgar stuff to prospective mother-in-law and father-in-law in an attempt to distract away from the topic of me considering them as my parents. They've apologized for not taking more time to understand my situation. They simply thought didn't have parents equals wants parents. I've apologized for what I said. I'm glad that a lot of replies here are understanding of my desire to just leave the parents section of my life blank. Prospective mother-in-law and prospective father-in-law still think it's just a defense mechanism that I'll eventually get past. R.E. Lola. We're doing extremely well. I figured I'd be, at the very least, occupying the couch for a bit. But on the first night, she came out after brushing her teeth telling me to hurry up and come to bed, as if it was my fault or something. Sometimes dreams do come true. There's been a little adjusting as she comes to terms with the new information, but she trusts that there's not anything else I'm hiding, and I'm not. R.E. The family's reaction and marriage. We're still engaged, but most of her family is adamantly against us getting married for the reasons laid out above. Her parents are one of the few on our side. Oops. Hope things can cool down so we can get married without incident, but it's out of our hands for the time being. Graculin says, you have to admit that you intentionally deceived her, aka lied, for a few years, so if nothing else, you are the a-hole for that. Your future in-laws were trying to do something nice for you, but took it too far, so they are the a-holes for that. Who the hell cares what Grandpa thinks? The one thing you are not an a-hole for is wanting replacement parents. With what happened to you, I don't think anyone could blame you. Everyone sucks here. Fenris Wolf 9 says, I don't think you're ready to share your life with someone yet. It's understandable you don't want a parental figure in your life, but that was an a-hole way of shutting down someone who could literally have no concept of what you've been through, trying to tell you they want to support you and be your friend. You need to work through your issues with some professional help. JRM 1102 says, well, yeah, you're the a-hole. You intentionally deceived the person you wanted to spend the rest of your life with, and then mocked her parents when they, albeit a little overbearingly, tried to show compassion.